Hello, very good evening and welcome to ITV News. This is Monday night's calendar.
Thank you for joining us on the day our region fell silent to remember the servicemen and women who made the ultimate sacrifice for their country.
Yes, on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, people came together to pay their respects for those who fought for our freedom.
How important is that, doing that parade to you guys?
It's very, because it's like, if it weren't for them, we wouldn't be here today.
But tonight it's feared that some of our longest running remembrance parades could disappear because of a lack of police support.
Well, we've been doing it since the First World War, and I think to just pull the plug on that, I think it's a bit ridiculous.
We'll have more on today's Armistice events shortly. Also coming up.
Leaving a bitter taste, a new push to help ensure Yorkshire's small independent breweries get the credit they deserve.
A walk on the wilder side, the Blades boss is in good voice after a big derby win over bitter rivals Sheffield Wednesday.
And a few frosty scenes across the region with some pockets of fog over the next few nights. I'll have all the weather details later on in the programme.
But first to the silence that fell over our region at 11 o'clock this morning as Yorkshire communities gathered to remember and to honour the countless men and women who gave their lives in service of this country.
106 years on from the Armistice being signed, which brought an end to the First World War, at monuments, in workplaces and at homes up and down our region, people stopped to reflect and to pay their quiet respects.
This was the scene on the Hedgerow at Leeds, where a 2-minute silence was observed after the sounding of the last post. Wreaths were laid by members of the armed forces and the Lord Mayor.
In York, one of our region's few remaining Normandy veterans, Ken Cook, laid a wreath to honour the men he fought with at just 18 years old and remember those who never made it back home.
Around 300 people gathered to pay their respects at the Duke of Wellington Regiment's memorial in Halifax. The regiment had a long history in the town, being formed there in 1702.
And at Beckingham near Gainsborough, people gathered on the village green to pay their respects amid a display of more than 8,000 poppies which have been hand-knitted and crocheted by locals. Well, yesterday on Remembrance Sunday, thousands gathered at traditional parades across the Calendar region.
But there are real concerns that one of our longest running, along with many others in South Yorkshire, could be lost forever because of a lack of funding and support.
It's because the county's police force says it can no longer afford to set up road closures to accommodate them and says it's now down to organisers to contact their local authority. It's left volunteers having to raise thousands of pounds and taking traffic management courses.
Helen Steele spoke to organisers of the parade in Conisbrough, home of Yorkshire's oldest D-Day veteran.
Fred Adamson is 105 on Friday. For many years he attended his local parade in Conisbrough, remembering the comrades who gave their lives in World War II.
Sadly, due to ill health, Fred can't be with us today.
This year he couldn't make it. But the worry is, in the future, there might not be a parade at all.
We've had to engage the services of a traffic management company and we've obviously had to get approval from Doncaster City Council and get insurance as well.
This year's event went ahead thanks to fundraising and dozens of volunteers. Well, last year, South Yorkshire Police announced it would withdraw its support for planning and implementing road closures for remembrance parades in its area. Organisers say they were told that parades aren't a requirement for an act of remembrance.
Well, we've been doing it since the First World War, and I think to just pull the plug on that, I think it's a bit ridiculous. You know, there's plenty of soldiers now that are suffering from PTSD, etc. That, you know, this day's a bit special to them.
How important is that, doing that parade to you guys?
It's very, because it's like, if it weren't for them, we wouldn't be here today.
Ronnie McGrath's family come here every year. He died in battle, aged 17.
Well, I don't think it's right. You know, people are coming out to show their respect, and that's all part of it, isn't it? You can't do it without that sort of control.
While this service was on, over at Bramall Lane, South Yorkshire Police manned the closure of 6 streets for the Sheffield Derby game.
Oh, well, say no more.
No. Yeah, you've got to get your priorities right.
Yeah, and I think shame on them.
South Yorkshire isn't the only force not to police parades. Last year, North Yorkshire Police withdrew its support. Road closures for Whitby's event were manned by a team of local builders who trained in traffic management. But in West Yorkshire, the force is supporting Remembrance events.
Philip Knight, on behalf of Mr. Fred Adamson.
Here in Conisbrough, there's a strong sense of determination to keep this event going.
I'd rather they didn't make that decision, but I also appreciate, with lack of resources and funding, that they had to make that decision. And it's about, OK, as local councillors, what do we do to meet that gap?
In its 105th year, this parade is the same age as its local hero, Yorkshire's last surviving D-Day veteran. It's hoped this will not be the last. Helen Steele, ITV News in Conisbrough.
Well, a little later in the programme, we follow Simon Brown, who was blinded by a sniper in Iraq, back to school, as he explains why it's so important to remember our servicemen and women.
More of the day's news now, and police are working with Sheffield Wednesday Football Club to investigate an image on social media that appears to show a supporter mocking the death of former Sheffield United player George Baldock during yesterday's derby match between the two teams. In a statement, Sheffield Wednesday said there's no place in football or society for such appalling behaviour.
Hundreds of jobs could be lost after the mining company Anglo American announced that it will be closing its site in Scarborough. They say the closure is part of a slowdown caused by budget constraints, with the Woodsmith fertiliser mine reportedly costing more than £2 million a day to operate. North Yorkshire councils say 450 jobs are expected to be lost at the site between now and the middle of next year. OK, next tonight to the decision by small independent breweries in our region to ditch their craft beer tags in favour instead of the label indie beer.
They say so many drinks are now badged craft beer that it's confusing for consumers.
They're being supported by a new scheme that will see beer pumps in pubs and bars carry, well, a special sticker, making their drinks easier to identify. Chris Conway has more.
Independently made in small batches and sometimes with unusual flavours, the unique selling point of drinks labelled as craft beer. But now, with many of the large global brewers also selling their own craft beer, it can be hard to know which are made by independent breweries. It's an issue that Luke from Ilkley Brewery is all too aware of.
About 80% of beer drinkers want to be drinking independent beer. Actually, only about 40% of them know, certainly some of the big brands, and are really surprised when you do tell them that they think they're drinking an independent beer when actually they're not.
To try and help simplify things, the Society of Independent Brewers and Associates has launched the Indie Beer campaign.
Currently, the 9 top craft beers in the UK are owned by the Globals.
It's hoped new stickers on pumps will help make indie beers easier to identify.
We know that there's been a huge increase in the amount of people trying to find independent businesses, and particularly people engaging with independent breweries. We want to make sure that every single person that's trying to buy a beer from an independent brewery is actually doing so.
This small independent brewery has been running since 2022 and is set to benefit from the new campaign.
We put the same amount of love and care into every single brew that we do. It is time consuming.
They've made 18 different beers over the last 12 months and hope the Indie Beer campaign will help raise awareness of the effort that goes into production.
From brew day to actual being able to sell that product, it can be 3 to 4 weeks. Some products are aged for a lot longer than that, so our lager, we tank condition that for 10 weeks, and something like this barrel-aged Belgian double, that's been 4 years in the making, so yeah, quite time-consuming.
Those behind the campaign are working to add the Indie Beer logo to cans and bottles too, all to help make the industry as transparent as possible for consumers. Chris Conway, ITV News.
Bet you're feeling thirsty after watching that. Now then, world leaders are arriving in Azerbaijan for this year's International Summit on Climate Change. As they gather for COP29, they've been warned time is running out to limit the rise in global temperatures.
That meeting may well be thousands of miles from here, but researchers say the concerns are being felt in our part of the world. More than 3/4 of people have told a survey they think climate change is a serious threat to the UK.
So what do people here want to change, and how big a priority is it? James Webster reports.
Extreme weather events are becoming more frequent and more fierce, no longer just something that happens in countries far away. And researchers from the University of Leeds have been asking whether scenes like this have focused people's minds. The new survey found more than 3/4 of people think climate change is a serious threat to the UK. 70% think urgent action here is needed, most saying it needs to come from the government. And for 20% of people, it's one of their 3 most important concerns facing the country. Important research that could help shape government policy, according to the team behind the report.
I think the survey showed that people are willing to change, but they want that to be fair and equitable. So really they're looking for government to get the messaging clear, but they're also looking for government to put the investment in the right place and also hold companies to account to deliver. And if those are in place, they feel like they're part of that journey, as opposed to they're being asked to do something and everyone else is getting away with it. It's that collective action of feeling that we're doing it together is what the survey shows. Asking someone to go and do something which is inconvenient to them without that bigger picture really is a very difficult ask for government.
This year's COP29 conference opened in Azerbaijan this morning. Sir Keir Starmer is on his way there after a visit to Paris earlier. But it's just months since he watered down his party's £28 billion plans to reach net zero. So here in the Calendar region, how much of a spending priority is climate change? We've been out speaking to people in Sheffield.
So important. It is where the future's going, and obviously we all live on the planet, so we've got to take care of it, and people aren't taking enough notice.
No, it's very important, yeah, that we do something. It's just going to get worse.
There are many difficult discussions for world leaders to have in Baku over the next 2 weeks, but they are issues which are already affecting people who've seen their homes ruined by fire and flood.
The smell of smoke, that really has stayed with me, all that, and then the burns and things on your arms, it just brings back memories of the day of throwing buckets of water on there and desperately trying to save your house.
They are issues we have been investigating too. The work to make homes more sustainable, transport systems more resilient, and to find new ways of generating power and monitoring energy use, like this online tool with live data region by region, as experts continue to warn that the more time goes on, the harder it will be to prevent irreversible changes to our planet's climate and the consequences that causes. James Webster, ITV News.
And a lot more on climate change throughout the week here on Calendar. Now, the ITV Evening News continues at 6:30. Let's find out what's on the programme. Here's Mary Nightingale.
Coming up in the ITV Evening News, the former soldier Daniel Khalif, who escaped from prison, dramatically changes his plea to guilty partway through his trial. Plus, the nation falls silent to mark Armistice Day, remembering those who died serving their country. Pressure mounts on the Archbishop of Canterbury to quit after a damning report found the Church of England covered up sexual abuse by a barrister. And just after 7, we'll reveal the stars heading into the I'm a Celebrity jungle. Would you join me for those stories and more at 6:30?
Thank you, Mary. We will. Now, it's 6 months since his election win in York and North Yorkshire sent shockwaves through the region. Labour candidate David Skaith was voted in as mayor back in May, much to the surprise of many Conservatives who'd historically held power here for many years.
But it was soon down to business for Mr Skaith, who swiftly swapped his high street menswear shop in York for the daily duties of devolution. And, as he's been telling Sally Simpson, he's hit the ground running.
Really enjoyed it. Those first 3 or 4 weeks were really challenged. It was a real eye-opener. It was a whole new world, whole new combined authority. Obviously, I was new into it as well. And then we had the general election, obviously, for 6 weeks, so that kind of had a big impact on it. And then we had summer recess, so it hasn't been the smoothest 6 months.
6 months have passed in a flash since he was thrust into the spotlight as a new mayor.
A Labour mayor for York and North Yorkshire, David Skaith.
And now he's got his feet under the table, it's time to talk facts and figures.
Thank you very much.
75% of our region is rural, and we see our real strength in that. Those beautiful towns, those beautiful high streets we have, our heritage, our culture, our arts that we have in that region, but also agriculture, food and farming. And when I go to number 10 and I speak to Kieran, Angela and the team about what our priorities are and what our strengths are, no other mayor has talked about food, agriculture, farming, and we can really stand up and say, this is our USP, our really unique selling point. It's going to put us on the map.
You've talked a lot about the positives of the North Yorkshire region, and there are many, as you've listed, but what about the deprivation? How do you square the two?
It's a real challenge for our region. I think a lot of people from the outside of it look at York and North Yorkshire, it's beautiful, it's leafy, it's green, everything's fine. But actually we do have those pockets of real deprivation. It's our job and our challenge and my team's challenge to actually get into those really deprived areas and really support them from the ground up and help everyone in our region.
If we come back in 3.5 years and look back over your 4-year term, what do you hope to have achieved?
I'd hope to still have some hair left, I think, to be honest with you. I think for me it would be a few things. It would make sure we really shifted the dial on supporting people in their communities. I think that's something that I'm really passionate about. I think we have a lot of people in our region who do feel left behind, who have been left behind for many years, and we have to move that dial on the fact that everyone in our region deserves that equal opportunity.
Opportunities to relax away from the job are precious. I know it's a full-time job, David, but what do you do in your free time?
I try as much as possible to spend time with wife and kids, and they're only 7 and 10, so they are still quite little. They both love sport, so I spend a bit of time trying to coach my son's under-10s football team, which I am a terrible football coach and a terrible footballer, so that doesn't always work out very well. It's not easy, this job. It is full-time and some, and if you wanted, you could work 14, 16 hours a day, 7 days a week comfortably, but you've got to find that balance. If you don't do that, you're just going to get burnt out.
Balancing the books at his York menswear shop is the old job, and David says it's an advantage in the new one.
Not coming from a political background, having a small business, young children, say wife involved in education for a long time, my brother being a police officer, kind of you've seen sort of first-hand what the impact that the last 10 or 15 years has had on our frontline services and on our people. And if I can make the difference and bring that energy and that drive into that, then hopefully I can make a real long-term difference to our region.
And that was David Skaith ending that report from Sally Simpson in York there. Well, time for some sport and bragging rights for the Blades in the Steel City Derby.
Xero Accounting Software sponsors ITV Regional Sports Report.
And Chris is with us. Good evening, Chris.
Good evening.
Of course, it was the Blades who were victorious in the big Sheffield derby at the weekend. Is it one that's going to go down in history?
No, not a classic, Ian. No, it's not going to go down in the Steel City folklore, this one, that's for sure. But the result, well, as far as United are concerned, is all that matters. The game was low on drama and settled by a single goal. Tyrese Campbell making himself an instant hero, with the Blades fans scoring his 3rd goal since signing in the summer. Manager Chris Wilder, as you can see, a boyhood Blade, delighted at the final whistle.
Growing up and watching them, unfortunately not playing in them, you know, they were always special. So we were prepared. It's a young side, so we'll get better in bigger games. We have to be better in bigger games, but always knew it was going to be a tight affair, decided by a bit of quality, and we found that bit of quality.
Chris Wilder speaking there. Of course, he's very relaxed, isn't he? But he let his hair down a bit later, didn't he?
He did. Let's not forget, not only is Chris the manager of Sheffield United, he's a passionate supporter as well. And so he was certainly enjoying himself at a local pub last night.
Come
Do you think he's had a drink there? And who's that down at the front? Can you see?
Who is it?
It looks to me like England cricket star Joe Root himself. Is a huge blade as well, joining in with the singing. Looks like a great
Were you
night,
there
doesn't
as
it?
well?
I wasn't. I didn't get the invite. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, where was our invite? Terrible. Now, what about the rest of the football from the weekend, Chris?
Yeah, well, Ian, that result for the Blades lifted them into second in the Championship table above Leeds, who also won at the weekend. A scrappy goal from former Sheffield United defender Jayden Bogle gave the Whites the lead against Queen's Park Rangers, and the points were sealed late on when Joel Piroux finished into the bottom corner to make it 2-0. OK, let's take a look at our other teams to win points this weekend in League One. Barnsley won their South Yorkshire derby against Rotherham. Goals from John Russell and Stephen Humphreys increasing the pressure on Miller's boss Steve Evans. Whereas Huddersfield twice came from behind to draw 2 apiece with Crawley. Herbie Kane with his first goal for the Terriers, earning his team a point. And thank goodness for Doncaster Rovers, our only League Two team that didn't lose, and they've got Joe Ironside to thank for that. His header earning Donny a point at home to Notts County. And finally from me, it's a big week ahead for the Sheffield Steelers. On Wednesday, it's the first leg of their Champions League knockout tie against Eisbären Berlin at the Sheffield Arena. And they've had ideal preparation as well, with a maximum 4-point weekend thanks to wins over Nottingham on Saturday and this 5-2 victory over Berlin yesterday. And we will be at both legs of that Champions League tie against Berlin, in Sheffield on Wednesday and then over in Berlin next Tuesday as well.
Over in Berlin? Is that you heading off there?
It might be, yeah. I'm getting my passport ready.
It's all right for some,
Exciting times. Thank
Isn't
you.
Thanks, Chris.
You're welcome.
Now, finally, we return to Armistice Day and to one of the region's most recognisable veterans, Simon Brown, who returned to his former high school to speak to students about the importance of it today.
After a sniper attack left him with just 19% of his vision, he spent the last decade helping other blind veterans, as well as most recently becoming the Mayor of Morley.
Yes, he spoke to pupils at Woodkirk Academy who spent the morning making special poppies and performing songs. Amelia Beckett reports.
Well, let that lonely feeling wash away.
They are the new generation, singing to remember those before them. Pupils at Woodkirk Academy in Tingley, where veteran Simon Brown was once a student, welcomed him back on a day to reflect on both his journey and those closest to them.
I think that connection through family helps them understand that, you know, these things you might see on the TV or hear on the radio are actually real lives, real people, real families. And that connection, I think, helps them understand why we do Remembrance and the significance of actually standing there and paying respects to those who've suffered.
There was no set sleep pattern, you just grab it when you could.
Simon was serving as a corporal in Iraq when a sniper shot him in the face. Today he shared his story with Year 8 pupils, who in turn shared their own stories of relatives who fought before him.
So my family originally comes from Poland, so many of them fought against the Nazis during World War II. And here I brought with me my great-great-granddad's compass that he had with him during World War II.
So I've got my great-granddad's war badges from when he fought in D-Day, and I've got some souvenir programmes from when my great-grandma was in the Victory Parade.
My great-granddad, he served during both World Wars. And I also have my great-granddad's service book.
What does today mean for you then?
It means a lot because we wouldn't be in the world we are now if it wasn't for all those brave soldiers, especially the ones who lost their lives.
Lives immortalised in these letters, which students then had the chance to version onto poppies before placing them outside just before 11 o'clock, alongside a Help for Heroes statue donated by Simon.
So these soldiers could have been our age going to fight in the war, and I can't imagine the overwhelming responsibilities that they would have. So I think it's our responsibility to educate people to make sure that they understand and respect our ancestors.
A sentiment shared here by pupils today and pupils of the past. Amelia Beckett, ITV News, Tingley.
Ah, yes, nice to see that. There's some lovely tributes right across the Calendar region today, Laura.
Yes, it's been an important day, hasn't it? OK, well, let's catch up with Joe and the weather.
Good visibility on the horizon. TUI sponsors ITV Yorkshire Weather.
Thank you. A very good evening to you. High pressure dominating again this week. We're in for more in the way of dry weather. There's a chilly feel, though, to proceedings, with some much needed sunshine for our part of the world. We've seen it today, and there's a bit more to come tomorrow. Pockets of frost and fog over the next few nights, and into this weekend, something even colder awaits us. But this area of high pressure, which is giving the UK those much needed hours of sunshine, is clearer than last week's gloomy conditions, at least, with bright or sunny spells to come over the next couple of days. Back to this evening's details, a cool breeze, 1 or 2 pockets of fog here and there, and a dry night to come, with temperatures rurally dipping away in the Dales, the Pennines, low enough for a touch of frost. A chilly night for all of us and dry to wake up to on Tuesday morning. On to tomorrow, the sun will be up at 7:29. It'll set at 4:12 tomorrow afternoon. It's likely tomorrow will be rather chilly with the frost in places to start the day. Any fog will lift. We have that cool breeze. It's northerly again. So despite any bright or sunny spells tomorrow, it'll feel quite chilly. But there will be some sunshine to be had, slightly more cloud perhaps than this afternoon. It's dry and temperatures tomorrow will climb to 10 or 11 degrees. A chilly feel as we go into tomorrow evening once more, with a touch of frost and some pockets of fog here and there. As we get up on Wednesday, bright on Wednesday and dry. We'll be pulling in more cloud as we end the working week, but with that high pressure remaining in control, it stays dry into this weekend. Through Saturday, a band of rain will move through, heralding the start of some rather chilly weather ahead. Bye-bye.
TUI sponsors ITV Yorkshire Weather.
Looks like we'd better make the most of this week then.
I love the way Jo says it with such a nice smile.
She's the way that she says it, it's like it's 25 degrees every day, isn't it? It's so sunny.
It certainly isn't. That's all for now. Thanks for watching. I'll be back at 5 to 11 with our late news. See you tomorrow. Good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.